Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I have a great little tutorial for you. So after I went ahead and made all these beautiful little mini books, it's only natural that I wanted to do a bigger one. So here it is. And basically what I've done is I have taken that same design where I deconstructed that little bookmark kit and made it into a larger journal so that you can make one of your own. Now, I'm not going to call this a junk journal. I don't want to call it a junk journal because it's not junk. I used some pretty beautiful paper. I used Stamperia paper, plus I used some scrapbooking paper, plus I have been tea dyeing and coffee dyeing paper to make some beautiful textured papers that I want to include in journals. So definitely I'm not calling this a junk journal. I think perhaps I'm just going to call it a vintage journal. So I want to show you what I did. So I basically just tied it up with some twine to add that extra vintage feel to it. What I also did is, do you remember the leather that I showed you in my haul? I used little strips of it to make a closure, and I'm going to show you how I did that. It's just attached here. I've put some brads to make it look quite classic. I've also embossed the leather, which is just so beautiful. I've put an eyelet through and then threaded this twine through. On the spine here, I didn't use leather like the original bookmark kit. I used canvas, and I love this look. And then on the inside, I'm very proud to say that there are no holes and there are no strings. I'm going to show you how I bound the pages, but look at this. This is just gorgeous. I used a combination of Kaiser Craft papers plus 7 gypsy papers plus my own tea dyed or coffee stained paper to make this gorgeous little vintage travel journal. So if you're interested in making one of these, stay tuned because I have a great tutorial to share with you. I'm going to start off with 3 pieces of craft cardstock, just your regular thickness of cardstock. You're going to need cardstock that is 4 3/8 wide by 6 3/8 high, and you're going to need 2 pieces of those. You're going to need 1 piece of spine, which is 1 1/4 wide by 6 3/8 high. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just adding washi tape to hold everything together. And you're going to make sure that there's a little bit of space so that you can fold the covers like so. Now you're going to need another piece of spine that is the same width. It is 1 1/4 and by 6 3/8. Just put that off to the side. We're going to use that in a little while. Next thing I need you to do is cut some canvas. I use this because this is easy binding, and you can see there that the measurements are 7.5 inches high by 2 inches wide. Now you can make this as wide as you like and as high as you like. I didn't wrap it all the way around the inside, and I didn't go too far off the edges either. So you could do what you want here. Just make sure that you have at least enough to cover the spine piece. I am adding Eileen's tacky glue. This stuff is great because it grabs on straight away, and it's a pretty good hold. It works really well on fabric, and it works really good on paper. So I'm combining paper and fabric. This is my chosen method of adhesive. I'm just adding it everywhere, and then I'm going to make sure that it's going to stick down, and then I'm going to burnish it really well so that there are no globules of wet glue sitting between the material and the paper. And you can see there, because I'm using cardstock, it's nice and pretty flexible, and you can make almost like a rounded spine, which I really like. Okay, so the next thing you need to do is decide your pattern of paper for the inside and the outside. I'm using this pretty paper by Stamperia. I'm cutting it down to 5 inches wide by 8 inches high, and basically all you need to do is cover just that little bit of excess from the canvas to the edge of the paper, and then you're going to need a little bit to wrap it around the inside of the spine. I am adding a combination of double-sided tape plus the Eileen's tacky glue. Make sure you're aware of your direction. Make sure that both the front and the cover go in the same direction if you've got directional paper. And burnish really well so that there's no wet glue sitting in, pooling in areas. Now this is the lazy way of cutting corners. If you just do one straight across, I much rather taper from each side. It gives you a better corner coverage, believe me. And then what I'm doing is I'm adding the tacky glue to the flaps, and then I am bringing the flaps in and burnishing them really well. And you only need about a 10-second hold there as you burnish, and then the tacky glue does its work really nicely. So this way you get clean coverage and it looks nice and neat. Now make sure that you fold along the spine areas really well. Really important that you burnish those areas. I also felt like I needed a little bit of tacky glue between the paper and the canvas, so I went ahead and added some more there and then smoothed it out with my finger. And now it's time to cover the inside of your journal. Just making some measurements here, and the final measurement is going to be 9 3/4 wide by 5 7/8 high. And you need to make sure here that you add the score lines for where the spine is going to be. And if you notice here, I've added double-sided tape on either side of the score lines of the spine, as well as adding the Eileen's tacky glue. And then I'm going to bend where the spine is, and then I'm going to burnish really well. Next thing to do is just to add a little bit of inking around the edges. I think it makes it look like it's a little bit more aged and a little bit antique and a little bit vintage. I really like the look that it gives. I'm using Distress Ink Vintage Photo. Give that a good dry. And now it's time to assemble and prepare your pages. I'm using a paper pad by Kaiser Craft called Check-In. This is an old collection. I would say maybe 2014, 2015 perhaps, and I'm just going through now and picking out a few pages. You're going to need 10 in total, so if you choose 5 pages and use 2 of each, then that will be enough. So I've just measured here that you're going to need, that each page is going to be 4 by 6. So I'm going to measure 4 inches across, an 1/8 for the spine, and 4 inches across. So you're going to need your pages to be 8 1/8 of an inch wide by 6 inches tall. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that your paper is cut at 6 inches high. Put your paper to 4 inches and then score, then flip the paper around, put it to 4 inches, and score again, and then that way you have the 1/8 of an inch gap, which is going to be your gusset to stick that down to the spine. Now remember your spine piece. This is 1 1/4 inches across by 6 3/8 high. So I want you to mark it at 1/8 of an inch intervals and then flip it over and do it on the other side. And then I want you to run a straight line from the top to the bottom. So you should have 10 sections of 1/8 of an inch apart. And that way 10 pages can fit onto this little spine. So if you cut each of the pages down so that they each have 1/8 of an inch spine, they will fit into the slot on the spine. I know it might sound a little bit hard to understand at the moment, but you'll see what I'm doing here. So basically just make sure that your paper is cut at 8 1/8 inches wide, and then put it up to the 4-inch mark and then score. Then flip it over, put it over at the other 4-inch mark again and score. And the difference that will be left over is 1/8 of an inch, and that 1/8 of an inch is the gusset that's going to attach to the spine. So you should have 10 pages ready, and what I've done is I've chosen 4 different designs, plus I've added a few tea stained papers. So now I'm just making sure that that they're all in the correct order, and then we're going to start attaching the pages to the spine piece. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to add double-sided tape and then add a thin spot of PVA glue as well, and then just make sure that you line your gusset up to the edge of the spine, and then burnish really well. And then flip it over to the other side and burnish again. Then add another 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape, put a little strip of PVA glue, grab your next paper, and then make sure that the spine is butted up to the previous paper's spine. Burnish really well, open it up, and then make sure that everything's all right. And then burnish again, and then add the next one and add some more PVA glue, and then butt up the next piece of paper's spine up to the previous spine, and etc., etc. You know what I mean. It feels a little bit awkward when you first start off, but it's really easy, and once you get the hang of it, you can do these really quickly. Just make sure you burnish and make sure that everything is in a straight line. That's the most important thing. And the reason why I draw the lines on the spine is to make sure that the double-sided tape goes on straight, and that the thin strip of PVA glue that I add is also straight. So it kind of helps guide you along to keep everything straight. All right, so once that last one goes on, you should have 10 pages on this thin strip of cardstock, and everything should be pretty much flat. Everything should be straight. I just go through every single page and make sure I burnish everything down, make sure everything folds nicely and looks good. So this last piece of spine now needs to have some double-sided tape go on it. Then burnish everything really well. Then remove the backs of the sticky side, and then add some PVA glue, and you are ready to attach the spine to the book. And the best way to do this is just to close the book up a little bit and then line up the edge of the spine with the score marks, and then burnish really well. Okay, so after everything is nice and dry, I'm loving how this looks. It's now time to think about a closure. So what I decided to do is I have grabbed some leather. I picked up some leather on my recent travels, and what I decided to do was emboss it. look how amazing these turned out. I am just in love with the texture of leather and the durability of it. I mean, this stuff is great. So for this one, I've used the Tim Holtz like a clock embossing folder. This one is an Ornate, what's it called? Ornate Flourish embossing folder. And this one, I was just checking this one out. This is Anchors. This is cool, but not for this project. This one here is Kaiser Craft's, I think it's a damask. It's just absolutely gorgeous. So I think out of these two, any of these two will work. And I think I'm going to go for the Ornate Flourish for now. So what I want to do is perhaps just like this. So I just want to sort of mark where I want it. So I want it to go here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach it with both hot glue and E6000. So the hot glue will work for an instant stick and the E6000 will work for the forever hold. And I usually work in that fashion. So and then all I want to do is think about how I'm going to close it. Now, what I did want to do here was I was thinking of adding 2 brass brads to the corner here. I think that's going to look really nice. Oh, I really love how that looks. That looks really great. Alrighty, and lastly, I was thinking about the closure. So I was going to go ahead and put an eyelet through. Got a whole heap here. Not too much. So I was just going to go with like an eyelet around there. So I need to get my crocodile. So all that's left now is just to tie it off with whatever you choose to do. And I've chosen, because it's a little bit of a man theme, a little bit of around the world, rugged leather and whatnot, I've chosen to go with a little bit of twine. This might change in the future, but I thought, let's see how this goes. So what I want to do is put it through this way. So loop it, send it through the eyelid, and then send it back through like this. And then this can just be as easy as this kind of closure. Really love how this turned out. I love that there's no holes whatsoever. You don't have to worry about holes. I love that it's a simple closure that's all attached. You know, sometimes when you open up journals, the attachment falls off and you have to go find it. I love that the string is here attached. I love the look of the leather. I love the look of the brass. I love this Stamperia paper. It's gorgeous. I love the coffee stained pages and that they're attached straight into the book like this without any staples, without any holes, without any strings or elastics. It's just a set amount of pages, and that's all you've got to worry about. So this is going to be my tutorial for now. This is how to make this album. I may do just a flip through a little later on after I've filled it. I may also film a little bit of the decoration of the pages. We'll see how we go. I do have in mind use for this project. Perhaps the Flora Rose series will incorporate it. We'll see how we go. So for now, thank you so much for joining me, everybody, and I will see you in my next video.